Greetings, everyone. It is Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, everybody, make sure you go to dynastymirror.com. Again, make sure you go to dynastymirror.com, buy some merchandise while you're there, buy a book as well. Also, like, share, and subscribe to the content, you guys. Like, share, and subscribe to the content. We really appreciate your guys' support. And then Patreon, become a monthly Patreon, patreon.com, search for Uhuru. Again, and everything is the ticker at the bottom, guys. Just those are all the links. So patreon.com, search for Uhuru, become a monthly Patreon, supports Black owned media. Well, today's topic is Nigeria losing its sovereignty to China through problematic loan agreements. That is today's topic. I really see, Ebube, you hear more about Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, but you really don't hear that much in regards to Chinese involvement in Nigeria. Is how heavy is Chinese? How heavy are the Chinese in Nigeria as far as? In fact, I'm sorry. Before we do that, Ebube, guys, let me introduce my host. I'm so sorry. I jumped right into it too soon. We have my brother on with us today, Ebube Okoli. And again, today's topic is Nigeria losing its sovereignty to China through problematic loan arrangements or agreements. So, Bube, how involved is China in Nigeria? Because the thing is, there's so much that's Nigeria owned that you really don't see the Chinese as much as I see them in other places. So, how deep is China and Nigeria? And go ahead and introduce yourself as well. Let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Ebube Okoli. I'm a host of Up Close and Center. That's a channel that was recently started, Up Close and Center. It focuses on geopolitical analysis, focusing and centering on the African continent. So it's in-depth geopolitical analysis of key issues in Africa. And it's from the perspective of an African who can actually see and analyze what's going on without the bias that typically comes from the larger media houses whenever they analyze Africa. So that channel, of course, is Up Close and Center. The logo is black, the lettering is white. That's Up Close and Center. Make sure you subscribe. Content is coming out. And so on that channel, for example, we covered China's relationship to Africa. And Dynas, you brought up a good point, and I'm going to address that and then get into the larger point. When you go to Nigeria, you see that everything is basically owned by Nigerians.
Right.
It's not like South Africa or even a lot of East African countries where you have a lot of a high foreign presence there owning many of the key industries. So Nigeria is blessed in that sense that many of the indigents actually own most of the industries and businesses. So when it comes to China, it's not as if you have Chinese businesses directly competing with Nigerian businesses in all aspects of the economy. Now, when it comes to large infrastructural projects, and once again, we have to look at what China is. China needs to keep building for its economy to stay what it is. Part of China's ability to leap forward and move forward was the fact that they invested heavily in infrastructure, and those companies and arrangements for building, they needed to build other things. So they exported that to Africa. And they essentially, their initiatives in the beginning were just to come into Africa and provide key infrastructure that wasn't there and finance those projects. Now, in financing those projects, they had certain stipulations that if you default on the money that we're going to give you to build this infrastructure, we're going to take this infrastructure that we just built. And so a lot of nations took on some of these loans for infrastructure. But the main problem isn't the loan in and of itself. It's that some of these contracts didn't get strict scrutiny. And what African people have experienced is that many of these contracts, and the prices are inflated or they're done in a way that's more costly. And many of the Africans look at those overheads as going into the pockets of the people who arranged those deals, as opposed to truly being reinvested back into the nation that's going to have to carry that debt. So that's something that we've seen all over Africa. In certain places, certain countries that have taken those loans that were greater than what they could actually bear, lost key infrastructure to China based on the agreements of those loans. Now in Nigeria, you noted that it's not really Chinese businessmen. And Nigeria is blessed in the fact that there's large gas reserves, large oil reserves. It's a large economy. So a $10 billion loan is big, but Nigeria could absorb something like that. Not that Nigeria wants to, but Nigeria could. But a smaller nation like Djibouti or some of the smaller economies, that may be entrapping that nation in debt for the next 50 years or more. So when you look at debt, you have to look at it in terms of how big the economy is. Can this nation truly absorb this? It's almost as if you're going for, and the way the Chinese do it, it's similar to in certain areas where you see where people can take their cars and they can give the title to somebody, and that person will give them money. It's similar to that's how China does their loans. Essentially, they build something. Sometimes it's needed infrastructure. Sometimes it can be argued that it's excessive, extra infrastructure that's not needed. Therefore, people begin to question and wonder, why is this nation taking this loan for infrastructure that's not necessarily needed? And are we sure?
My bad. I'll give you an example. In Zambia, they built a 50,000 seat soccer stadium. Like, name one soccer player for the Zambian national team.
Exactly.
Right.
So now you see that maybe a factory or some sort of water processing plant or something that would actually have a tangible effect on the lives of the people, to the point where they know that if we're for the next 10 to 20 years are going to be paying for that water processing plant, we know that at least we're going to have clean, pure water in this country for the next 20 years until this is paid off. And then you figure out how to manage this key piece of infrastructure to keep it going. Something like that is okay. Now, a stadium, and another thing with those projects is that sometimes you see that it's with the price that one was built, 3 or 4 could have been built.
Right.
Now people start to look at those projects and really start to question them as to whether or not they're truly needed. And what we're really saying is, we're saying that Africa is, and I believe you say this a lot, Dynasty, Africa is the place to be.
Right.
In the future, now Africa is really the place to be. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing a concerted push by the historical powers and the current superpower to get further into Africa, because Africa is where the world is going to be towards the end of this century. So everybody's jockeying to make sure that they're not left behind. So now, for example, with the African Development Bank, the tussle there with the leadership, it showed that one thing Africa really needs to do is Africa really needs to make sure that when we create things like a development bank, that we don't invite members from outside of the region into the bank. Right. Because we have 27 countries that aren't in Africa as stakeholders in the African Development Bank. It begins to look very interesting, because you don't have the same phenomenon happening with the counterparts in Asia, America, or the European Union. The African nations aren't invited to those institutions. So now we also have to make sure that we're protecting our sovereignty. And you have to remember that economic and political sovereignty is what a nation has. Freedom within its political process to act in the best interest of its nation. And then economic sovereignty, freedom to actually exploit its riches as a nation and capitalize off of them first before any other nation. So you have your political independence, and your economic independence is the recipe or the formula that makes sovereignty. So right now, a lot of nations want to grab onto either a nation's political or economic independence, as was the case with colonialism. So people are starting to now discuss neo-colonialism in another form. So African nations want to go ahead and be aware to avoid that, because they need to understand what Africa is going to be by the end of this century.
All right. Guys, make sure you hit that like button. Let's see here. We do need an African diaspora bank to enable the diaspora to invest. Okay. I agree. Let's see here. Shout out to Melissa. Melissa said you are one of her favorite guests.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure.
Now, okay, so the loans that Nigeria is taking out, what are they being used for? And then I was watching, I think it was Channels Television. I guess one of the ministers was being accused of,
Rotimi Amechi.
it was being accused of embezzling some of that Chinese loan money. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that's what I saw. Or
Well, what happened is that recently it's come to light that there's something called a sovereignty clause that's in many of these Chinese contracts. Now, what a sovereignty clause is, and we have to remember the mode in which China operates. China will give you the money, they'll build the train or the railroad or whatever it is. And if you can't pay for it, then they come in and they basically nationalize it and make it part of China. So China will essentially own the railroads in your country if you can't pay for the railroads that China gave you a loan for the Chinese companies to come and build. So it's called the sovereignty clause because typically it's not the Chinese government per se, it's companies that are essentially linked and backed by the Chinese government. And so the nation could always just say, you know what, this company isn't allowed to own anything in this country. Right. And they could just sign that into law and say, you know what, you can't come back here to this country. Whatever you put here is ours. So a nation, to an extent, does have the right to exclude. A nation can exclude anyone they want to. So
after the fact. Are you saying after the fact?
After the fact. Now, you might become a pariah among the world community if that's how you conduct business. You invite a bunch of foreign investors, and then you steal their investments and kick them out. You depending on who you're doing that to, there can be serious repercussions. But so there's something called a sovereignty clause, meaning that regardless of your national sovereignty, we can always come and take this, which is very risky because Africans have to understand that everybody wants a piece of Africa. Everybody's coming for Africa. So these sovereignty clauses, they can seem benign on their face. But what you were seeing at the airport was Rotimi Amechi, Minister of Transportation, and I believe he has a few other portfolios. He was very influential in bringing the current president of Nigeria to power. So he's a very prominent member of the APC. And so he was being questioned as to this sovereignty clause, because at first glance, this looks like neocolonialism. And Nigerians rightfully so scrutinized and said, okay, why are we signing such deals? How much are we taking? Why are we even taking loans? We have gas, we have oil, we have a robust economy. Why are we taking these loans? How are they being dispersed? And in Nigeria, there's a common belief that most times money that comes in the form of loans, where it can be spent in ways that can't really be tracked. Many Nigerians believe that money ends up in the pockets of select wealthy individuals. Whether that's true or not, it just reflects that there's a pervasive belief that does happen. So when you hear of money being given to people, and with the level of money being mismanaged, and the stakes are your sovereignty, people are going to naturally say, hey, we have some questions of you. And we do have to remember that it's not the Ministry of Transportation that actually can get loans from foreign nations. It's the Ministry of Finance that has to sign off on that. And then the Ministry of Finance will then distribute that money where it's going. So people were erroneously saying that it was the minister that was signing these loans. No, he was requesting that the Ministry of Finance do it. But that's neither here nor there. But that's just the protocol and the process in which it flows. But yeah, there are questions about the fact that, hey, there's a sovereignty clause in here. We've been colonized once directly. We don't need to be colonized indirectly again.
Right.
And that just reflects the general attitude of a lot of Africans. A lot of Africans are now getting smarter. They're utilizing alternative media. They're looking at platforms like yours. They're watching Up Close and Center. And they're starting to see, wait a minute, there are some questions here that we need to ask. This isn't the 90s and 80s where we blindly followed these leaders. We now need to know what's going on. Shout outs to O'Shea Duke Jackson, great guy. But and so that's the issue. A lot of Africans are starting to understand the political game and play it a little bit smarter than they've been playing before.
Now, there's the do you know what's going on with Murtala Muhammad, the new terminal that has been under construction since the first time I went to Nigeria?
A long time. It's gonna be it's one of those things, but it's a very ambitious project because you have to just remember that airport was the top of the tops many decades ago, and they never anticipated. And you have to remember that airport was built during. There was a time when Nigeria's government hasn't always been as stable as it is since the last 20 years, since the year 2000 when the Obasanjo administration was there. Prior to that, you had Abacha, Ibibi, Wari as the military governor. And so whenever a new government would come, they would forget to do things like upgrade the airport that's growing rapidly with this rapidly growing city called Lagos. Maybe build more bridges, have more access roads, have more of a master plan. So because they were more focused on let's maintain power and avoid another coup, they left the little details like administration. And certain things suffered because at the end of the day, if you're not keeping an eye on making sure that the airport is large enough and up to date and modern to handle the amount of the volume of passengers coming in, you're making a mistake. And the airport is a victim of that. So now they're trying to correct the problem, but it's essentially building while the plane is flying. So it's they still want to keep it close to max utilization while making adjustments in building. So that's why it seems like it's taking so long. But the new airport in Abuja was recently finished a few months back. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Very beautiful structure.
Yeah, I haven't been to Abuja yet, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go soon.
You gotta go. You gotta go with me. You gotta go with me. You gotta go.
Whenever they open these borders back up. So
yeah, when the world opens back up again.
Yeah. But as far as the refinery, that's not being funded by the Chinese, is it? Or is Dangote funding that himself?
Yeah, Dangote is taking care of that. Well, it's a Dangote group. When people talk about Dangote, they always talk about it as if it's just one person who's opening up his checkbook. Dangote, the group, there's investors, there's different people of that nature. So it's a group, and work is still ongoing. They're working their best through, but work is still ongoing, which is surprising, but it's a great thing because that refinery is going to do a lot for the Nigerian economy. And it's something that should have been there 30 years ago. Right. Common sense dictates it's something that should have been there. And so it's good that it's still moving along. But another thing too is that Nigeria is going to start exploiting gas a lot more. Gas has more of a shelf life in the future than crude oil does if we're just looking towards 2100. And Nigeria has a lot of gas, and gas infrastructure is currently being built. And that's one of the things that Nigeria is banking on using is the gas infrastructure to go ahead and fix the electricity distribution and generation issues that Nigeria has been plagued with. So the proper utilization of gas is something that all Nigerians should be excited about because that will truly solve the electricity generation and distribution issue.
I hope so. Now, can you go into detail as far as how the economy is going to be impacted once this refinery is completed?
Now, one thing that we have in Nigeria is we have an odd situation where Nigeria has some of the easiest crude oil to refine, some of the easiest crude oil in the world to refine. And when you refine crude oil, you get several products. You get kerosene, gasoline, you get all sorts of things. You get petroleum jelly that's in the Vaseline. You get a lot of different things. So Nigeria, because of the refineries aren't necessarily running like they should, Nigeria would send some of its crude oil away to be refined externally, creating jobs in foreign nations, creating wealth for foreign nations, and then those foreign nations would give us a certain amount of crude oil back into the nation. So you see, just within that transaction, you've lost a lot of money and you've lost a lot of time. You've lost a lot of things. So imagine being able to cut out the middleman to being able to take crude oil from your actual country, refine it within your country. And also that will further get rid of that fuel subsidy that's been lingering around from administration to administration, which many simply call a waste of funds.
Okay, guys, hit that like button, and what we'll do here in the next 5 minutes, we'll take some calls if you guys want to call in. I'll put my email in the chat. Send me an email, and I'll send you the link. Listen, Nigeria's crude is the sweetest of the whole world. So, okay, if that's the case, why isn't Nigeria Dubai yet? Why not?
Well, here's the thing. We have to remember, too, Dubai is actually a small place. Nigeria is 200 million people. If you divided up the oil per person, it wouldn't be that much, but it's a lot to the oil in Nigeria. See, here's the thing. Here's what Nigerians have to understand. The oil in Nigeria isn't enough for everybody to just sit back, not have to work, and just collect money from the government. The oil in Nigeria is enough that if the government is serious, the government can have first world infrastructure. Now, with first world infrastructure, you can now build a first world economy and everybody can benefit. So Nigeria isn't oil rich where everybody can just receive a check in the mail and drive Ferraris. No. Nigeria has almost 200 million people. And Nigeria, towards the end of this decade, is going to have 800 million people. It's a lot of people or more, because somehow Nigerians always exceed expectation. Right. So now the thing is this. There's enough money for Nigeria to have first world infrastructure. Anybody who's traveled to Abuja has realized that fact. It's one of the cities in Nigeria where everywhere you go, there's essentially first world infrastructure. So if Nigeria can do that there, Nigeria could do that for the whole country if the political will was there. So that's why Nigeria is not Dubai, because Dubai, it has a different set of metrics. Dubai is smaller than Lagos. So.
True. Yeah, but they have the what's the name of the project they're working on that's supposed to be the Dubai of Lagos, but it's only
Echo Atlantic City.
Echo Atlantic, but it's just 2 skyscrapers there.
Well, no, it's going to be it's almost the size of Manhattan in terms of landmass. The good thing is that they've started correctly, because Echo Atlantic City is essentially Dubai off the coast of Lagos. Because Lagos was kind of a city where they just made things happen as they went along. This is good that they now have a downtown that's going to be planned. Now, many people have been raising the question of ownership. Who actually?
Somebody said Lebanese own it. I heard Lebanese. I heard Nigerian. I heard.
Well, here's the thing: the Shigori Group owns it. And the Shigori Group is a conglomerate, but the face of the Shigori Group are a family of, I believe, 2 Lebanese brothers who were born and raised in Nigeria, I believe. They've acclimated to Nigeria, but there's also Nigerian partners. Now, from my understanding, Echo Atlantic City, the electricity, the plumbing, the sewage, the water, those have all been privatized, because in most places in Nigeria, PHCN, what people still refer to as NEPA, some jokingly say never expect power at all, but NEPA would basically run the electricity, and people would have many complaints because they felt NEPA or PHCN, depending on what you want to call it, did an inadequate job. So with Echo Atlantic City, for example, power is privatized, water is privatized. So now here's the issue. Now, if a company comes in seriously and they provide electricity, that's good. That's a great thing. But what we really want to make sure is that, was there a Nigerian company or a group of Nigerians who we could have gotten to generate this electricity before we run to Germany for Siemens, or run to this place to get these experts? Did we utilize our local content? Because we have a lot of brilliant minds in Nigeria. So we may celebrate that, yeah, Echo Atlantic City is going to have full-time light, but the group providing light to what's going to be one of the preeminent cities in Africa, is it an African company? Did we look inside Africa to see, hey, can we actually do this ourselves before thinking that the grass is greener on the other side? And so that's one of the things about Echo Atlantic City, is that people are wanting to make sure that, hey, this is ours at the end of the day. That's a question that's been floating around, but it looks like the utilities have been privatized. Who they've particularly been privatized to is another question that has to be looked into. But most of the buildings, I believe the first building, Alpha 1, it's a building built towards the Marina District. It was a Nigerian man completely constructed that. And there's a lot of Nigerians who can build skyscrapers, or groups of Nigerians. There's a lot of wealth in that country. And so at the end of the day, Echo Atlantic City, those who build on it, the buildings are going to be owned by Nigerians, of course. But we have to ask ourselves, who's providing light, who's providing water, and these type of things, because we don't want to outsource something we can do ourselves to another group.
Okay. Guys, hit that like button. Sandy, I sent you the link. So call in, click on the link, call in. I sent you the link. Let's see here. It's shameful that Nigerian hedge funds are saving a dead airport in England and not saving Zambia from predatory. What dead airport? Or Gatwick?
I believe there's an airport a group of Nigerians purchased in the UK. But I believe what the person is saying is that, why are Nigerians focused on the UK when they should be focused on Zambia? But the issue with Zambia is that Zambia is an independent country. They neither invited Nigerians nor requested Nigeria. Nations that do, for example, in Mali, Goodluck Jonathan went out there to advise them and be an election observer. They requested that he come because it would give it legitimacy to bring in heads of states from the regional power to come and watch the election. So if African nations invite Nigeria, Nigeria has no problem coming in and playing the big brother role, but the nations have to reach out to Nigeria. They can't retroactively say, well, why wasn't Nigeria more involved when Nigeria wasn't invited? Because Nigeria has its own issues to deal with, but Nigeria has always shown that it's ready to play the big brother role in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Also, too, Gatwick is Nigerian owned anyway. So is something happening where they had to put together some type of consortium to raise funds to save it? Or I'm kind of confused because Gatwick's always been, for the most part, has been Nigerian owns Gatwick.
I believe that it was a group of, I don't think it's just one person. I could be mistaken. I thought it was a group of Nigerians that kind of came together and made that happen. But essentially what the person is talking about is Lusaka Airport. Like we said earlier, China will come in and they'll build something. Now, you have to make sure that they're building it at the correct price. You have to say, the people are now becoming smarter. They're starting to scrutinize some of these contracts more and say, wait a minute, this is costing 3 times more than what it should cost. Where are these going to? Let's slow these down because these are very serious loans. Because if you look at Lusaka International Airport, you see that the Chinese now have a great hand in that because of loan repayments not being paid properly. So that scared a lot of Africans because, wow, this could actually happen if people aren't serious or taking these loans as serious as they need to take them.
Let's see here.
Emo Sandy.
Sandy, go ahead.
Hi. Well, I think, thank you for allowing me to join in here.
Sandy, you're very low.
Can you hear me?
You're very low.
Oh God, now they're gonna hear. Can you hear me?
That's better.
Okay, so thank you for allowing me to join the show. I have a few questions to ask Ebube. One question I have for you is there some sort of consortium that Nigeria needs to form with other African nations to devise a strategy to address sort of their relationship with China with regards to the investments and the infrastructure?
Okay, do you want me to answer that question now, or do you want to just do rapid fire? You say all of them and I address them, and you let me know if I need to address any. How would you like those questions to be answered?
You mean to address it? I say you.
I'm sorry, are you asking me or are you asking Prince Dinas?
He's asking you.
I was asking you.
Yeah, I'd like an answer, please.
Okay, what's going to happen is that from what it looks like, many of the people who are benefiting from the chaos, because in the African system, there's a lot of chaos. So sometimes things can slip by unless there's strict scrutiny of things that are happening, like loans being taken. So now what's happening is, and like I said earlier, it's probably not going to come from the mainstream African media. It's going to come from the new media. New media are the independent voices that are putting themselves out there to go ahead and say, here's truly what's going on. So now if you look at it, there's a lot of whistleblowers. In the 90s and the 80s, before the advent of the internet and the ability to communicate as freely as we do over the internet, a whistleblower could quickly be silenced. But now somebody might see something, get it to one of the independent media sources, and before you know it, they put it out there. So it's not going to come through the government because many of the people who benefit from these irregular dealings are in government, and they don't want any type of scrutiny for obvious reasons. So now it's going to come from the independent media, and that's what's happening now. Because if you look on the internet, you can see when an African is being mistreated in Kenya and who's doing it. When an African is being mistreated in South Africa and who's doing it. And the people can see what it is and make up their minds for themselves and then demand greater from their leaders. And that's what we're witnessing now. Does that answer your question?
Well, fair enough. Yeah. That answers my question. Fair enough. My other question would be, are there a number of private equity firms that can, sort of reposition African countries like Nigeria and compete against that Chinese inflow of cash?
You know what? The richest group of Black people need to be thoroughly tapped into and engaged with. Per capita, the richest group are Black Americans. Now, Black Americans can easily take the place of the major financer for a lot of these projects in Africa. We just need awareness to penetrate. and for Black Americans to truly capitalize and take advantage of their natural position, because it's going to strengthen them in Africa. But that's a goal that many have been pushing for, but it seems like it's more likely this century than in the years past.
Well, let me unmute.
Thank
Go ahead.
you.
My pleasure.
Okay. All right, cool. Is there anybody else? We'll take one more caller. We'll take one more caller, but real quick, shout out your page so people could go and subscribe.
Definitely. So everybody wants to go to Up Close and Center. It's in-depth geopolitical analysis. It's Up Close and Center. So you want to go there and go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so that you'll be alerted when new content becomes available. So the topics are very deep. I go into very deep topics, but I explain them in a simple way that as soon as you're done watching, you leave knowing something that you didn't know before, and you know a lot about the topic. So go to Up Close and Center and subscribe. And for everybody who's subscribed, the channel's been growing very, very rapidly in just 2 months. I really appreciate all the support and the appreciation, because at the end of the day, you put the work in and you hope that the people appreciate it. So thank you for everybody who's been appreciating it. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, go there now and subscribe.
Okay. Yeah, so make sure you subscribe to Brother Ebube's page. All right, let's get his subscriber count up so he can monetize. Are you monetizing yet? Are you there yet, or?
Not yet, and the goal really is just for me to let people understand what's going on, because the more people who understand what's going on properly, the more likely things are going to get put in motion. So that's the primary goal of it.
Okay. Perfect.
But I welcome monetization. Why not?
Let's see here. Last question. How is Nigeria going to take advantage of Africa's free trade agreement?
Well, right now, we're in a very precarious situation because the free trade agreement was signed before the pandemic. Right. Nobody had thought that this would happen. Everybody,
and the borders
are a high level of interstate trade and integration. Nobody would have guessed that we're seeing the exact opposite, where nations are telling countries like the United States, we don't want your citizens here. Right. This time last year, nobody would have saw that. So we have to kind of look at the African continental free trade in light of the pandemic, but we'll see how borders open back up, because what's going to happen is there's predicted to be a rise, a slight resurgence as we move into the fall. And so a lot of nations are going to take precaution. So we're going to see how things go, because a large component of trade is also the movement of people, not just goods. So we're going to see how things shape up, because nobody can truly anticipate how the rest of this year is going to go. Even though there's just 4 more months left, nobody can truly predict how 2020 is going to move.
Okay, perfect. So let's see here. Any more questions? Guys? Make sure you like, share, and subscribe as well. Let's see what else we got here in the chat room. Yeah, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and close out, brother. Anything you'd like to share in closing?
Oh, no, just everybody stay safe and take proper precaution.
There you go. Stay safe, everybody. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, family. Dynasty Mirror, search for Uhuru. Let me see if I got any more emails real quick. No. Until next time, Dynasty Mirror, search for Uhuru. Peace.